Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pivot Point DFS presented by FanDuel on the Believe Network, part of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. I am Keith Cork, and I am your host for this wonderful journey. As we look back at Week 13 in NFL DFS, another winning week. Wasn't much. I barely won. You might be a little angry at me. I did mention I was fading one of my calls for a strong play. I did not mention another one, but we'll get into that. And we'll look at week 14 coming ahead as well, of course. I will say, in general, things that we're noticing or that I'm noticing is that it's getting a lot harder. Ownership is a lot flatter as people try to grasp at straws. Things are less apparent. The good plays, the chalk, are less apparent. So we're getting flatter ownerships. We're getting lower scores. And I feel like there's opportunity. I really do. I think there's some really nice opportunity this week and some guys that are really not getting a lot of love that we were loving earlier in the season. And so there's no reason not to. So there's some good pivots here that I think we should discuss. But let's get into what happened in week 13. Again, it was a successful week for me. I didn't lose, but I also did not win. Some bad calls were made. Some good calls were made. Kind of par for the course at this point. A lot better. A good rebound for me from week 12, though. Week 12 was really tough. But let's get into it here. For the SPY, the winning lineup had Tyrod Taylor, who I did mention, and I did not play, unfortunately. Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Jaden Higgins. John Mechie was his stack, but he also had A.D. Mitchell. I was off A.D. Mitchell. I will say I did not believe in him. Thought those hands were made of rocks. His hands were just, he could not catch anything. So I thought Mechie would be the guy there for sure. So if I was going to stack, I was going to stack with Mechie. I believe I did run out some Mechie here. We'll definitely see in a minute here, but I believe that happened. So, but it was A.D. Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell had a fantastic game, and the Jets won, and it was a really competitive game. Actually, a really fun game. I was listening to it as my son was in a Christmas parade this weekend. So while he was on the float going around in the parade, I was listening to this on my headphones, on my wireless headphones, and yeah, it was a good game. Very interesting, very competitive. Trey McBride was his tight end. Kamani Vidal, I said I was off of him as a strong play. He absolutely went off and had a good game, of course. Seattle Seahawks was kind of the key here at defense, which really I never really think too much about defense other than how can I save some money. They were 3,900, so far from the cheapest defense. But they had 30 points against the Minnesota Vikings, who ran out Brosmer, Max Brosmer at QB, and that did not turn out well for them. They're going to be welcoming back J.J. McCarthy. That probably won't turn out too well for them either, but we will discuss. Screen pass, it was Cam Ward. That was the value QB I ended up getting to. He was actually in a winning lineup, so it was possible to win with Cam Ward, which was really shocking to me. Kamani Vidal, Devon Achane, Jaden Higgins, Adonai Mitchell, Jalen Coker, which is interesting. Nobody was really on him. I didn't think one bit about him, so no way I would have gotten there either. Trey McBride was the tight end also. Bijan Robinson, and Bijan was really kind of the key also to winning these things, and I did not play him. Don't think I had anything against him necessarily. I think it's probably just because I played him so much already this season. I kind of want something new, which is a bad thing to do in DFS. Don't do that. So maybe an issue on my part. Maybe I should have thought about it a little bit more, but he did have a monster of a game. And of course, the Seahawks defense. So 197.28 was that winning lineup. 194.04 was the winning lineup for screen pass. And those are pretty low scores. And you'll see that the money line was actually pretty low as well. But in comparison, the money line was lower. To hit the minimum payout was a further gap between previous scores that we've seen than the top scores previously to this top score. I know that's kind of complicated, but if you think about it, basically what I'm saying is, since the ownership was so flat, a lot of people didn't have the right plays. So the minimum pay line was pretty low. But the people that did have the right plays still had a pretty decent score. That's all that means, really. But it was lower than previous weeks. Here's the chalk at running back. Excuse me. Devon Achane was high and away the most owned running back at 57% nearly owned. So well over half of the field had him. Was not, unique in any way, but he had a good game. It was decent enough. Brees Hall was next. Kenneth Walker was after that. Travis Etienne, Kamani Vidal, Devin Neal, Kyron Williams, and Bijan Robinson was the end of it. Bijan was only about 12% owned, so he was the quote-unquote pivot to go to here. That was not my guy. Should have been. I wish it was, but it wasn't. At QB, we had Jacoby Brissett have the most ownership, but it was pretty flat overall. He only had about 18%, and then CJ Stroud was next with 13%. And then Josh Allen, Cam Ward, and Justin Herbert round out the top 5 there. And they're all pretty, they're all within, 9% of each other. So pretty flat ownership there for the running backs outside of Brees Hall and Devon Achane. And man, Brees Hall had a lot of ownership, 36%. And Kenneth Walker also had 30%, which again, no touchdown equity there. It was always a risky play. I didn't get behind that. Wasn't really on Brees Hall either. So a large number of the field had those 3 guys, and then we have a drop off to Travis Etienne. So I could have honestly cut it off after Kenneth Walker, but I included those other guys as well. All right, meet the chalk for wide receivers. Wide receivers, we had Jackson Smith-Njigba was the highest owned, but this was really flat, like really flat ownership here. Everyone that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the top 7 guys are all within, less than 5% of each other, 23% to about 19%, a little bit under 19%. So very, very close in terms of ownership. But it was Jackson Smith-Njigba, Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, Khalil Shakir, Emeka, and that's the guy you're going to hate me for, but we'll talk about it. Emeka Egbuka, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Michael Wilson, John Mechie, and also Adonai Mitchell, DK, Devontae Adams, Ladd McConkey, and Tet McMillan. Chamari DK, I think is his first name, right? I'm sorry, I didn't think too much about him. Yeah, Chamari DK is his first name. Yeah, I didn't think too much about him. I did want to stack Cam Ward, but having Alec Ayamanar back, I really just wanted to grab him. And he did not make this list. Alec did not, from the looks of it. So that's kind of interesting. People went to DK instead. DK didn't do jack squabbery. Neither did Ayamanar. And the Titans didn't do anything at all. They had 3 points in total as an offense, so that was pretty awful overall. For the tight ends, we had Aronde Gadsden, Trey McBride, Gunnar Helm, who was the guy that I had in every single lineup of mine. And he was the one weapon in Tennessee that actually did anything. He had a decent game. They only scored 3 points. Tennessee Titans were terrible in general, but Helm came through. You have to wonder if they did score points, where he might have ended up. He does play again on this slate, so maybe a guy we'll be looking at. We'll see. Brock Bowers came next. Dalton Schultz, Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, and AJ Barner were the top-owned tight ends from Week 13. And here's, this is the most interesting thing about all that, I think. We've seen these fractions fluctuate, but this is the lowest by far. You can see here 22.9% of these. It was 35 picks that had really a majority of the ownership. Typically, that's in the low 20s, like 22 to 25 is typically what we see in terms of like where I think the ownership is concentrated. So there were 35 picks that had kind of concentrated ownership here. So it was spread out among a lot of players. And you can see here, even though it's spread out among a lot of players, very few of them actually ended up getting to 3x value, only 22.9%. 1 out of 5 of the top-owned QBs hit 3x value. That's compared to 4 out of 5 last week. 2 out of 8 of the top-owned RBs hit value. That's compared to 2 out of 6 last week. 2 out of 14 of the top-owned wide receivers hit 3x value. That's it. 2 out of 14. Last week was 5 out of 7. Yeah. Really big difference there. 3 out of 8 of the top-owned tight ends hit value, which is pretty okay, actually. And then 1 out of 4 last week was what that was. So, yeah, 22.9%. of these picks that were pictured in that those last slides there were hit 3x value, and that's lower than the lowest we've seen so far when I started tracking this was week 2, 29.6%, which is, I mean, it's over almost a 7% difference. So yeah, ownership only concentrated on 22 players last week. So last week we only had 22 players where ownership was really, I would call chalk, right? And this week it's 35. So very interesting. So my chalk calls from last week. Justin Herbert, was he chalk? Yes. CJ Stroud, was he chalk? Yes. Tyrod Taylor, was he chalk? No. He ended up being the best QB of them all, basically, in terms of value. 5.7% owned only about 6% owned. So that was really a good call there. It was a guy that I had mentioned, but did not go there. I tried. I made some lineups, but ultimately I decided not to go that route. So mea culpa, my bad. Bijan Robinson, yes, he was chalk. Devon Achane, yes, he was chalk. Bijan Robinson was the last guy in what I would call chalk, so barely chalk. I'm going to count it, though. Breece Hall was chalk. Kamani Vidal was chalk. Kenneth Walker was chalk. Jackson Smith-Njigba was chalk. Puka Nacua, yes. Jalen Waddle, yes. Nico Collins, yes. Chris Olave, no. Only 8.8% owned. Borderline, right? Almost double-digit ownership there. Teteroa McMillan, yes, he was chalk. Tyler Warren, no. Only 3% owned. Very interesting. And he actually had a decent game, if I recall. Be looking at him this week for sure. Ronnie Gadsden, yes. And Kyle Pitts, no. Only 6.3% owned, which is really surprising. Pretty shocking. He had a really good game. I figured people would be on him. I was off of him. I guess people just thought like I did. We'd been burned by the guy the week before. Didn't want to play him. I went with Gunnar Helm there, and it didn't turn out too badly. So I'm not worried about my 10 position, but definitely a little bit of a miss there on my part. But as you can see, there's 4 misses here. Last week, if you recall, when we did this, it was like 7 or 8 misses. I also had more chalk calls, though. So honestly, not my best work, but ultimately, we were mostly on the right guys that people were going to be on and understanding where the crowd was going to be. Just a few issues there. I have more calls this week for chalk as well. So, but very few chalk calls. It was a very confusing week. There was a lot of uncertainty, and I think following the news helped me out ultimately in the end. But up till Sunday and making swaps and late swaps and stuff like that. But it was very difficult on Friday night to tell you who was a good play and who wasn't. I did my best. So here are my top plays from that night. I said Devon Achane. He was 57% owned. Yeah, he did fine. He did 2.7x value, almost 3x value at 8.4K. We'll take it. It's fine. It's not bad. It's not good. Kamani Vidal. He was 16.6% owned. He had 4.2x value. So that was great. 23.7 fantasy points on 5.7K salary. That was a fantastic call. I ended up coming off of him for reasons I'll discuss in a minute. But yeah, that was a great call there. Emeka Egbuka, no. Honestly, looking back, I don't even know what made him stand out to me other than the fact that, when I was trying to run lineups and sims, he was coming up as a good play. And that's on me. That's my bad because I relied on it too much. And that was not ended up burning me. Ended up burning everybody that followed me there. So not a good call. He ended up putting up 1.3x value, only 8.2 fantasy points on 6.5K salary. Injured quarterback. I was a little nervous about it anyways because of the, Baker Mayfield's dealing with an injury. And, they're getting guys back. I mean, Godwin being in there. I should have been off. This should not have been top play. I'll say that much. So there you go. Didn't end up being like the thing that sunk your ship, but it wasn't good. Phil Shakir, now that was terrible. 21.3%. And I don't really mind this call as much. It's really interesting because, this guy only put 0.3x value, and Emeka Egbuka did 1.3x value, and they're similarly priced. Khalil was 5.5K, and Egbuka was 6.5K. But I'm more upset at myself for the Egbuka call because I really had no ground to stand on. I didn't think about it hard enough. I should have thought about it harder. The Shakir call, he's kind of the one constant in that Buffalo passing game, and they got to get that passing game going. It's got to happen at some point. So, we're hoping for it to take off. He only had 1.5 fantasy points on 5.5K salary. They still didn't have Dalton Kincaid, so there were reasons to like Khalil Shakir. It just didn't work out. So I don't hate myself so much for that call. I ended up not playing him. I don't think in any of my lineups. I didn't say anything about it, which again is my bad. I should have definitely said that. I said I was coming off for Kamani Vidal. I did say that in my comment in the Discord and on the video, but I did not say I was coming off Shakir. And that ended up saving me. And if you end up playing Shakir, I'm sorry. That should not, I should have advised you to take him out of your lineups as well. Greg Dulcich, right after I was, or maybe it was the next day, I think it was Saturday. We got news that, I think it might have been Friday night, but we got news that Darren Waller was activated off IR, was going to play. So that made Dulcich not a play. I mean, and I did say that much. I did say I was off of him, so I'm just going to put injury issues. Waller came back in. Dulcich was not a play for me anymore. Pivots that I played Cam Ward. He was only 7.3% owned, but he was 1.4x value only, 6.34 fantasy points on 4.6K salary. A lot of people had that idea, obviously. He was third in QB ownership, I think, is what I saw, right? Let's go back to that slide. Sorry. He was fourth in QB ownership. I don't know where I got that number from. He was 9.09% owned. Maybe I just didn't change it from previous, but either way, he was pretty high owned. So not really a pivot necessarily, but it was pretty low owned, and he did terribly. It was awful. He put up 6.34 fantasy points on 4.6K salary, 1.4x value. Yeah, not good. James Cook was my guy that I had as basically the face of the podcast last week. 7.6%, which is nice. 3x value, which is also nice at 7.6K. That was a good call. Wasn't incredible, but it was fine. It was good. Travis Etienne was 14.9% owned, 0.8x his value at 5.1 fantasy points at 6.5K salary. Not good at all. Yeah, he got shut down. Etienne did, which is really a bummer. Egbuka, yeah, not good. Gunnar Helm, I don't know why I put Egbuka was a top play, not a pivot, so I don't know why I put Egbuka there twice. Is that supposed to be someone else's name? I'm not sure. Wow, my brain. Sorry, guys. Gunnar Helm was 11.1% owned, 3.2x value. So, again, he had value for us, 8.3 fantasy points on 2.6K salary. That was fine. The min cash line in the SPY was 122.84. And, again, that's lower even than week one. Week one was 122.92. So when we knew absolutely nothing going into the season, we thought we knew things. We had leans, we had guesses, but we had no data points. We didn't know anything. And the min cash line was 122.92. Now we have 12 weeks of data. And the min cash line is even lower. Sorry, for the SPY was 122.02. So actually it was higher in the SPY. But for the screen pass, it was actually a little higher. 122.94 compared to 122.92. So a little bit higher than week one, but basically the same. And we have all these data points, and it doesn't matter. It's getting harder. I mean, I think what can we attribute to this to? What's the reason for this happening? I think pricing has obviously gotten a lot tighter. DraftKings is much better at pricing these players now. So there's not soft pricing. So there's not an obvious guy that's like, 4K or 3K or whatever that we can go to. Now that does change, of course, right? This week we have a guy coming up I'll talk about that's under 4K that is going to be chalk, and it makes all the sense in the world because injuries do happen and the pricing comes out before sometimes we get injury news. That did not happen last week. So, very low min cash lines. Once again, I had the right QB identified, but did not go that route. I had Tyrod Taylor. I had him. I discussed him. I said he's going to be a popular play. I just didn't want to go with him. I had the run wide receiver on the Jets anyways. Like I said, I went with Mechie instead of Adonai Mitchell, so it wouldn't have mattered had I played Tyrod Taylor unless I played him naked or something. But Mechie didn't really do anything at all. I had to pivot off Dulcich, because Waller came in. Waller was ruled in, so Dulcich was dead. I also pivoted off of Khalil Shakir due to wanting to get to James Cook more. Yeah. So the reason I came off of Khalil Shakir is because I did mention this. I was getting more and more bullish on James Cook. because I thought the ownership would be low. I thought he'd have a good game, and that did turn out to be true. That was a great call, right call. But you can't play, a wide receiver and running back on the same team in a vast majority of scenarios. So if you've got James Cook in your lineups, you're not getting Khalil Shakir in there. So, a part of me can say you should just know this, but that's really not a good thing to say, right? I don't want to say that to you guys. I should be more clear and more precise with what I'm recommending if I'm going to be recommending these things. So next time going forward, I'll try to remember, hey, I'm getting higher on James Cook, so therefore Khalil Shakir is not necessarily going to be in my lineups. Probably not. So, I also came off coming out of it. I think I ended up having maybe one lineup, but that was a mistake coming off of him. It was basically a wash because I faded Shakir, which worked out. I faded Kamani Vidal, which did not work out. So there you go. Here's what I did end up with though. I placed in both contests. I lost, I think, $5 in the screen pass. I won $50 in the spy. So I won $45 in the week. I'll definitely take it over losing, of course. For the spy, I went with CJ Stroud, and I paired him with Nico Collins, and I also stacked him with Jaden Higgins, which that was really the key there because Higgins, wide receivers just kind of all around were very underwhelming this week, but Higgins had a really decent game. He had 11.5 points on 3.9K salary. So, basically 3x value there, if my math is correct, because if it was 4, it'd be 12. So, yeah, basically 3x value. So that was a good call there. I brought back with Alec Pierce, which was also a great call because he did catch a touchdown. He did. 4.8K salary. He was with 17.8 was his fantasy points. So, a couple of good wide receivers really carried the day for me. That was really it, right? And I got that way. I got there because I was stacking. My running backs were Ashton Jeanty, who didn't do anything really of note at all. Devon Achane, of course. My tight end was Gunnar Helm, of course. And then I had Puka Nacua at my flex, and he also did not do anything. 13.2. But like I said, wide receivers pretty much across the board did not do anything. Unless you had Adonai Mitchell, which is just crazy. So it was kind of a weird week. A weird week for wide receivers for sure. And then the Dolphins were my defense, and they had a decent enough game playing against the Saints, which you could have pretty much predicted that. For my screen pass lineup, which ended up scoring about 13 more points than 13 more points than my spy lineup. I had the same stack: CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Higgins, and Pierce with the bring back, and then I had James Cook as my running back, which was the guy I wanted. I had Devon Achane, and then I had Puka Nacua on my flex, Gunnar Helm, of course, my tight end, and then my defense was the Panthers, which was a spend down. It was just 2,100 for them. They ended up having a great game though against the Rams. Had a touchdown, had a fumble recovery, a couple interceptions. Matthew Stafford really crapped the bed last week, so that was not good for my best ball teams at all. But yeah. So week 13, we come up $45 ahead. Overall, we are still $255 up. So we are playing for free and almost 2 whole weeks for free now. If we get another $35 or so. So, can't complain too much, but of course, still have not hit that big money. I definitely wasn't as close this week as I've been in a couple weeks in the past. Right? I think there are a couple weeks here so far where I've been like 1 play away, 2 plays away, maybe. And that's really exciting. This one, I had the ingredients, right? They were like around the soup, but I did not put them in the bowl. Like they were around, like I tossed some that I probably needed to have in there to make it a good dish. And I threw some other stuff in there that I probably didn't need to, that probably made it worse. So, close-ish. Not my best week, but not my worst week by far. So, a good bounce back. We'll say that. But that will bring us to the segment of the program that you care probably more about, which is talking about week 14. And, we've got, obviously, playoff implications here, which we will talk about. But some teams definitely on the bubble, needing a win more than other teams. That's going to affect how we approach this. There is some weather also to be on the lookout for. In particular, the Titans at the Browns. There is snow flurries. This game's pretty ugly anyways. I mean, it's the Titans at the Browns. I would assume it's going to be pretty low scoring. But yeah, with the snow, probably just a game to go ahead and it's an 11-game slate, so just go ahead and eliminate that game. Like, there is one. I shouldn't say that because there is one piece that I do want in this, but I'm not. It's not going to be Gunnar Helm. Not going to be Gunnar Helm, but there is one piece that I do want in this game. The Saints at the Buccaneers are going to have some possible rain. We need to get some more updates on that. It's possible, not necessarily a given. The Colts at the Jaguars are going to have possibly the same rain that's going to be in Tampa Bay. So I got to check back on that one as well to see where that storm's sitting, how it's going to affect those games. The Bengals at the Bills, there's going to be snow. It's going to be pretty heavy, and it's going to get worse as the game goes on. So that's going to be a popular game to stack, which I'll talk about at the end here. But I don't know. Given the weather, I think there's other games that are better choices. Bears at the Packers, it's going to be very, very cold. And I can tell you that for sure because I'm sitting right here in the Chicagoland area, that it's going to be very, very chilly. But yeah, it's going to be in Green Bay. The cold does affect players in different ways. So who do we downgrade? Who do we upgrade? I don't know. We'll have to go piece by piece here because there are pieces in this game that I do like. And I don't want to downgrade this whole game entirely. I really don't think just the cold's going to affect them enough that I'm going to fade anybody here. So, but that also has to do with the salaries of the guys I like, which are really agreeable. So who's going to be the chalk this week? At the QB position, I've actually got more names here than I think I've ever had on this show. But Josh Allen, as I said, that Bengals, Buffalo game is going to be a popular one to stack. And Josh Allen, 7.7K, and obviously there's a lot of eyes on him right now about, how do we get this passing game going? Because last week, 15 for 23, 123 yards. Those are not Josh Allen numbers, right? Before that, 253 yards, 317, 306. So we're all expecting a bounce back. And, of course, it's against the Cincinnati defense. That's pretty bad. So no reason to hate this play. The weather does give me a little bit of pause. The price does give me a little bit of pause because 7.7K is quite pricey. I'm not locking him in. It's not going to happen, right? Another guy that's going to be pretty highly owned, I believe, is Matthew Stafford is Matthew Stafford against his Arizona defense. Pretty agreeable matchup. I don't see anything super enticing about it, honestly. I think the total might be one of the higher ones, which would make sense. But nothing's screaming at me that I have to play a 6.9K Matthew Stafford. So I'm pretty much eliminating that one. I do have some builds with him in there, but I just don't see myself landing on those in my limited. If I had 150 lineups, whatever, I might throw some out there. I mean, it's an 8 point spread, and at the moment, and the total is 47.5. I mean, it's definitely one of the higher ones in terms of the total. So maybe that's where that's coming from, but I'm not on board with that one. Jaden Daniels, I am a little bit more on board with this one. Who knows? We're not sure what he's going to look like. Obviously, he's been out for quite a while, but he's got all those main weapons. It's tough defense against the Minnesota Vikings, but he has that rushing potential, which obviously, carries him above other people in the similar price range. And he's got, and like I said, he's got his main weapons back. So he's got Deebo Samuel, he's got McLaurin, he's got Ertz. Still don't have a run game, which, I mean, that doesn't really matter because that just means he's going to have to throw more. Did not look good in the last game they played for sure. And again, this is a tough defense in the Vikings. Definitely scary, but I do like the price tag, $6K. Pretty good for a guy that, if all things went well for the Commanders, he would be probably up in the 7 to 8. He'd be up in the Josh Allen range, right? So you still feel like you're getting a discount. And then perhaps my favorite of the chalk plays thus far is going to be the one and only, excuse me, Jacoby Brissett. 5.7K, but this guy's come through consistently for what, 4 weeks now, right? I mean, 5 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, no week below 21.4 points. And his price continues to stay basically the same. It actually fell $100 from last week, which is kind of crazy because he had a good week. Rams are a tough defense for sure. But in terms of like cheaper QBs, it's hard to beat. So I can get behind that for sure. Devon Achane is most likely going to be chalk again, and I've got no issues with it. He just does everything for this Miami team. Technically still in the playoff hunt, which is kind of crazy. They are still technically in it. They're going to be eliminated. I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think in the end, this Miami team just wants to close out the season and look right, and they can't really rely on good old Tua because he's just so bad this season. He's been really terrible. And it's a good matchup against the Jets, right? Who are traded away some of their main defensive pieces, Quinn Williams and everything. So, yeah, I can get behind Devon Achane. James Cook. James Cook is going to be popular this week, which is kind of funny because he was my guy last week. But it makes sense, and this one I can also get behind because again, if we think the weather's going to be bad, if we're not playing Josh Allen, I think it makes a lot of sense to like James Cook here. Obviously, we want to attack this Cincinnati defense in some way, shape, or form. He is a couple $100 more than he was last week, so that price did come up a little bit. That's the only thing that I don't like about the play, but ultimately, I'm going to have him in some of my lineups. No issues there. My second favorite running back play of the week, which will be chalky, is the one and only Josh Jacobs. I believe they flexed this game, the Bears Packers game, into the later slot because everyone wants to watch this. There's a lot of implications online here, right? The Packers need this win for sure. The Bears also need this win. If they don't win this, I mean, I wouldn't say kiss their chances of winning the division goodbye because they play the Packers again, but I think it's next week, right? They play them again next week, but there's a lot in line for both these teams, and the Bears definitely want this one. No, they don't play. Okay, so they don't play them next week. They play them on the 20th of December. So there's a game against the Browns in between. But either way, 2 out of the next 3 weeks they're playing the Packers. The Bears are. So definitely, and these teams obviously have bad blood going back a long time. But Josh Jacobs here, I mean, look, the Bears secondary got a lot better, right? They got back Kyler Gordon, got back Jalen Johnson. There is a lot to like about this. There's a lot to like about this Bears defense now and how healthy it's getting right at the right time. But the run defense is not one of it. It's not one reason. It's not a reason to like this team. So, I think Josh Jacobs he takes all the opportunities. He has the biggest opportunity share, one of the biggest opportunity shares in the NFL when it comes to, scoring opportunities, just carries in general. I mean, he does everything for this team. So Jacobs for sure is on the menu. Absolutely. Absolutely. RJ Harvey is going to be chalky. And that's really about the matchup. Playing against the Raiders, probably going to smoke the Raiders. Everybody smokes the Raiders. Defense has been bad this season. Obviously, Dobbins on the IR. RJ Harvey's definitely looked like the most explosive back. Had a good week last week, as you can see, but did it in the air and on the ground. So there's a lot to like here as well. And the price tag compared to other RB1s is a lot cheaper, 5.7K. I mean, that's only like what, $600 more than Devin Neal for the Saints. So definitely a good budget option for sure. Probably my favorite budget option for the running backs. Keyshawn Junkins, though, this is my favorite. This is my favorite play at the running back position on this entire slate, if I can find him, because I'm pretty stupid here. Okay, so here we go. Obviously, like I said, some inclement weather for this game, but that shouldn't affect the run game. And, Browns do rely and lean on the run game pretty heavily, especially with Shedeur Sanders there behind QB, under QB, and they don't fully trust him yet. He had, 25 attempts last week, 20 the week before that. So the attempts are relatively low, only really throwing, when they need to at the end of games. So, yeah, Judkins is going to get a lot of work. They shouldn't have an issue moving the ball against this Tennessee defense, which has been pretty bad. We haven't seen a really big game since week 7 from Judkins. And before that, week 4. So only a few really big weeks. I think week 7 was that one he scored, 3 touchdowns on the ground, but had not that many yards. Didn't even reach 100 yards, but he had 3 touchdowns, which Jahmyr Gibbs did something similar last night, but I digress. Yeah, I love Keyshawn Junkins here. He's my favorite running back playing the slate. Ashton Jeanty is also going to get ownership again. At some point, it's got to come together, right? I mean, I don't know if I can trust it. He did not do well that last game, of course. Up against the Broncos, tough defense in general, just tough defense all around. At some point, they got to get him going. That's all I'll say about it. So I guess that's why people might go there. I'm probably out. Probably not for me. At the wide receiver position, I mean, these names, some of these names, it's like, okay, yeah, of course. But yeah, Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua should be, relatively high owned on the slate. He's a little cheaper. If you look at the top owned wide receivers here, a little cheaper than Jackson Smith-Njigba, a little bit more expensive than Jamar Chase, but I would say for sure more secure in what he's going to get. You know where you're getting with Puka Nacua. And then beyond those top 3, there's not really an elite option. You got Devontae Adams, who's touchdown dependent. Justin Jefferson has his question marks with his QB situation. Drake London is out, I believe, right? Double check that, but yeah, he's already been ruled out. Jalen Waddle is kind of nice. We'll talk about some of these other guys, but none of these are really elite options except for these top 3. And when it comes to pricing per opportunity and per situation, I think Puka Nacua pops is the best option, personally. I do think Jamar Chase is going to also get ownership here against Buffalo. People are going to want to stack that game. These guys got Joe Burrow back. No issues there. I think that's fine. Michael Wilson going to get ownership again. Didn't do a whole lot last week, but people are going to want to play Jacoby Brissett. And, look, Marvin Harrison's out. So, don't Dortch. Weaver's being who else are you going to throw to? Trey McBride. That's it, right? I mean, no real run game to speak of. Trey Benson, we were hoping was going to get activated off IR, but he wasn't. So again, they're going to go, Bam Knight and Michael Carter again. And it's just, I mean, the only issue is that it's a good defense they're up against, and it's uninspiring. But I do think that Michael Wilson should get a lot of targets. Hopefully, he catches them. He should get double-digit targets here. He had 7 last week, even with Marvin Harrison in there. So, yeah, I mean, 5.6K, hard to beat for that opportunity. Very hard to beat. But one guy I think is going to be, he should be high owned, but probably not as high owned as these other guys I'm going to be mentioning to you. And that's Terry McLaurin. He looked fantastic last week. 22.6 DK points, caught 7 of 14 balls, but the ones he did catch were impressive, right? I mean, they just spoke to what a talent he is. Wide receiver 1 on his team. Tough matchup here against Minnesota for sure. But I do want to get some Terry McLaurin in my lineups. I think he's going to be under compared to what he's going to bring to the table in his scoring, the potential scoring he has. But he still will be relatively high owned. So don't get me wrong. I'm not unique in saying that. Christian Watson. And like I said, this Bears defense, the secondary is definitely getting better. But Christian Watson has obviously emerged as, the wide receiver 1 on this team. He's been getting most of the targets. He had double-digit targets last week against Detroit. Should get some, Gardner Johnson. Go across from Gardner Johnson of the Bears. So, there's definitely some CJ Gardner Johnson, sorry. There's definitely some opportunity here for these wide receivers to take advantage of this Bears secondary. So I'm not going to completely count him out. Not my favorite play on the slate, but he's only 5.2K, so I get it. A.D. Mitchell is going to be highly owned. And oh my gosh, is this a trap? I don't know what to tell you guys. He's going to turn back into a pumpkin, and you're going to be so disappointed. You're going to be so disappointed. It's going to be so sad. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he catches 8 balls out of 12 targets again. Has he in his career in the past? Think hard and long about that. 3 of 4. Look at that for 96 yards. Well, that was the one where he dropped the touchdown across the goal line, right? And then he got sacked next week. So, look, his salary came up to 4.6K. It jumped $1,000. Miami, definitely not a great defense, but they've been better of late. And I just think you're going to be disappointed. That's all I'm going to say. I wouldn't do it. It's a trap. It's a trap. For sure. For sure. The value guy you do want that everyone's going to have anyways, he's going to be very highly owned, but I want him. You want him. He's exciting. Gets people going. Luther Burden. No Rome Odunze. Bears are going to have to throw the ball. Probably going to be down in this one. Packers are favored. They're in Green Bay, obviously. Been showing us, his role has been increasing slowly. And now there's no Odunze. I'm not afraid of DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore may be the lead target earner, but there's still at least 6 targets here for Luther Burden. And there's probably going to be more in the line of 8 to 9. So a few more targets. He gets a few more catches. He puts up 60 yards. If he reaches the end zone, that's really the question mark here. He's going to hit amazing value. But even if he doesn't, right, 60 yards and 5 catches, we'll say. Okay, we'll say 6 catches. 6 catches, 60 yards. That's really good. 3.8K. You can't beat that. So I like Luther Burden a whole lot. I think he should be in all your lineups. Probably all mine. Maybe not all, but most. At the tight end position, the Chalky guys, first and foremost, I think we're going to see a lot of Tyler Warren. And I was wrong last week about this, but I think this week is the week because it is a good matchup for him against this Jacksonville defense, and because he's been relatively quiet, and because this is a really key game. I think people are going to stack this game. I think it's going to be not necessarily the most popular game, but people are going to glom onto this game. If Indianapolis loses, they only have a 55% chance to make the playoffs. If they win, they have an 86% chance to make the playoffs. So there's a lot in the line here. And then on the other side, for the Jaguars, they have something like a 70. I don't have it in front of me here because either way, they have a really good chance of making the playoffs. But it drops like 76% or something like that. They lose. So there is stuff on the line here for the Jaguars. Not as much as there is for the Colts. But the other reason that we like this is because, Daniel Jones dealing with that fractured leg, having issues getting out of the pocket and throwing it downfield. He did definitely look for Jonathan Taylor in the flat more, and maybe some of those targets go towards, Tyler Warren here. So, closer to the line of scrimmage, that's the work we're looking for tight ends and running backs. So Tyler Warren should definitely be on your radar for sure. I'm gonna try to have one lineup where I stack this game most likely, because I do think it's going to be a really competitive one, and I do think it's one where these teams both want to win. So not that every NFL team doesn't want to win, but there's a lot on the line. Kyle Pitts. Are people going to be back on him again? Signs say yes. 4.2K, not really a modest increase from his salary last week, which was 4K. We know that Kirk Cousins likes his tight ends. Take that however you want to. I know that can sound a little weird, but he does. 15.2 DK points last week, 8 targets last week against the Jets team and they lost the game. Yeah, sure. This is against a Seattle team where, it's a tough defense all around for sure, but they can be taken advantage of by tight ends. So I see the vision. I don't think I'm personally going to go there because I know what the Kyle Pitts experience is, and I know he just had a decent game, and I know everyone's going to be on him. Just look at these games before. I mean, definitely some context missing here. Penix was his QB for some of these. But 18 points and then followed that with a 4.8 point performance. He had a 13-point performance almost in week 1, followed that with just a 7-point performance. He's going to score points, but I think it's going to be underwhelming. I don't think you're going to be necessarily pleased with what you get of Kyle Pitts. Brenton Strange is going to be the other guy here, and I mean, I guess just because no other pass catchers in Jacksonville are reliable. Had a big week last week. Was having pretty decent weeks before that, also before he was injured. 2 decent weeks in a row, I should say. Reached the end zone the last one. If he doesn't get that touchdown the last one, he's 7 DK points. So, yeah. I mean, he looks fine. He's 3.9K. I have other options. I don't think I'm going to go to it. I like other options better. Who are the people I don't think are going to be high owned? Who are my pivots? The guys that I want to play that I don't think anyone else wants to play. These are my toys. You don't play with them. Who are they? First and foremost, the perennial pivot every single week, Sam Darnold. I'm pretty sure I'm going to run one Sam Darnold lineup out there. This is against the Atlanta defense that's been dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. And if you notice on my chalk calls so far this week, one name is mysteriously missing at the top of that list. Well, there's actually 2 names. Sorry. 2 names. I'm back and forth. I'll give you my pivot when I make this, when I release the podcast. It'll be the title. You'll see it. But anyway, you have to listen to the podcast if you don't want to. But I think Jackson Smith-Njigba not being a chalk play makes him very attractive, and you can stack him with my favorite pivot QB, Sam Darnold. I think I'm going to have one lineup at least where that happens. And you can bring him back. I mean, there's pieces on Atlanta they can bring back. Also, Bijan Robinson. You can bring back Kyle Pitts. And these are chalky plays, but they're good plays. So, yeah, I like Sam Darnold. Another pivot, another guy, top of the food chain here, top of the standings. We were all wanting him in every single lineup at the beginning of the season. And now that's done because he had some quiet weeks. And that is Jonathan Taylor. All of his scoring is concentrated in, weeks, 5, 7, 8, and 10, and 3 and 2. There's a lot of big weeks here for Jonathan Taylor. And it's a bad matchup against the Jaguars, but this is it. This has been the recipe all season. And it has not necessarily worked. I mean, it's worked, but we haven't had the pieces around it to make it work to the degree that we wanted to, right? We had Bijan Robinson on a week where nobody really had him, and he went off. But we want to take good players in bad matchups because the talent can overcome the level of the matchup. This is what the pivot is made for. This is what it means. So Jonathan Taylor is my favorite pivot of the week. No one's going to have him. He's 9.3K. He's the most expensive player on the slate. No Christian McCaffrey here, so people can't just mindlessly throw him in and get whatever floor they're going to get. So they're not even going to think about playing Jonathan Taylor against Jacksonville. But with this game leaning so much to the Colts and Daniel Jones being on a broken leg, and I mean, just it makes all the sense in the world. This is the week he's going to explode again. So there you go. I like Bijan Robinson. I think he's going to be pretty low owned. No one's really going to have him. I mentioned him already as a stackable option. I think that's probably the best way to use him is if you're stacking Seattle to bring him back with Bijan Robinson. Obviously, he's the biggest threat on this Atlanta team. Again, not a good matchup, but it doesn't matter. The talent outweighs the matchup. Not as big a game as Jonathan Taylor, but the price tag is also not as big. $800 less. So, I like Jonathan Taylor more, but I think this is a good one as well. Chase Brown. Chase Brown is another running back getting no love. We want to run against this Buffalo defense. That's been the playbook all season. I will say, the risk here and the reason I think people are not going to be on this is because with Burrow back, they're leaning less on him. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, he had less rush attempts. He had 7 targets still against the Ravens. But Joe Burrow has the ability to air it out. We have T. Higgins in there. We have Jamar Chase in there. We have Gesicki in there. We have weapons that need to be fed, right? And are the Bengals going to put up, 45 points in this game against the Buffalo Bills? Probably not. Right? What's the total of this game is currently 51.5, and the spread is 5.5. So what's the implied total there? It's like 23 points, something like that. My math doesn't math. I can tell you real quick. Hold on. Hold your horses, everybody. Oh, shoot. There we go. 23.75 implied total. It's not very high. And again, the inclement weather there. But I think Chase Brown is a decent option. All those things I said against him. The main issue here with Chase Brown, honestly, outside of all that, is the pricing. Because if you look at the running backs and their pricing, you have Judkins, that's $300 less than him. You have Breece Hall, who's $200 less than him. You have Jacobs, who's only $100 more than him. I mean, there's just better options around him. But that's going to make him low owned. So that's why he's a pivot play. There's no reason in the world that he can't score more than those guys I just mentioned. No reason. Against the Buffalo defense? No, there's not. Wide receiver, yeah, Jackson Smith-Jigba, already talked about that. He's going to have Mike Hughes in that Atlanta secondary, most likely for most of the game, and should be able to cook him, no doubt. Jalen Waddle at 6,800, I do like as well. I mentioned that a little bit early in the show as well. But yeah, he's definitely a quiet week last week, but they've got the Jets this week. Wide receiver 1 right now. He's like, oh man, he's like quiet weeks. Jeez, what, 4 weeks in a row? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's been really, really bad. Ugh. But hey, that means he'll be low owned. Nobody wants to go back to him. Chris Olave at 6,500. I like quite a bit as well. He has a good matchup as well in that secondary of Tampa Bay. They're going to have to throw on that secondary. Definitely a sneaky play, not going to be high owned. Price is a little expensive, 6,500, but we've seen some pretty big ceiling games from Chris Olave. Almost 27 points in week 7. 16, 24 points in week 10. So maybe we get a spike game from him and nobody's going to have him. That'd be nice. Michael Pittman at 5,400 also should be low owned. But again, I want to play Jonathan Taylor, so I'm probably not going to end up with him, but I still think Pittman or Pierce even is a good play against this Jacksonville defense because it's going to be so hard to run against them. So if you want to play into what the likelihood is, it'll be those wide receiving options. The other issue is the quarterback, right? Daniel Jones, limited mobility, doesn't have a lot of time to hold on to the football. So there's definitely risk associated there. But I like those plays as pivot plays. Malik Washington at 4,500, another Miami guy. Also going to have a fantastic matchup here in the secondary. Or 4,100, sorry. 4,100 is his price tag, not 4,500. Why did I fight it? 4,500. 4,100. Definitely going to be low owned. No one's going to have him. But he's basically he's wide receiver 2 on his team. His numbers look exactly the same as Jalen Waddle's numbers, basically. Was I looking at I think I might have been looking at Malik Washington. That's pretty funny. If you're watching the YouTube video, you can feel free to laugh at me. I think I was looking at Malik Washington when I was talking about Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle has had a couple of quiet weeks, but only 2 quiet weeks. Before that, he was having big numbers. Malik Washington is the one that's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 quiet, 4 quiet weeks. 4 quiet weeks in a row. But recently it's been the same as Jalen Waddle, and he's only 4.1K. And he has a good matchup. At tight end, I'm shocked. Nobody's going to go to Brock Bowers. Pretty shocked. I mean, scored 2 touchdowns in the last game. The issue is obviously they're playing against the Denver Broncos. But again, we play the talent. We don't play the matchup when it's a guy that's this talented, right? There's a threshold. There's a point where it doesn't matter. The guy is that talented that he can overcome anything, any matchup. So I think some Brock Bowers consideration should be given. I probably will not personally end up with him. I like to spend down at tight end. I have played Trey McBride a couple of weeks, but that's because he was underpriced. I don't think Brock Bowers is underpriced here. I just think he's low owned and he's fairly priced. John Johnson on this New Orleans team. Been getting a lot of work. 9 targets, 7 targets. Last 2 games. He hasn't found the end zone, but if he does, he's going to pay off that 4K salary. Harold Fannin on this Cleveland team. And again, I'm not in love with either Sanders at running back or the inclement weather. But he's a tight end, right? We saw him have a 34-yard touchdown catch and run just last week. Their only touchdown. Also had a decent week before that. So obviously he has a little bit of rapport with Sanders as well. So I like Harold Fannin this week. And then possibly my favorite tight end play on this slate because he is the cheapest that I want to play. Colson Loveton. A lot of people will flock to Luther Burden because there is no Roma Dunze, but Loveland should get some of that work as well. You can play both of them because they're so cheap, 3,200 and 3,800. I have no problem playing both those guys. And, maybe they combine for something like 20, 25 TK points. That's fine. Right? What is it? 3,800 and 3,200, 3.8 plus 3.2. And we, times 3. Yeah, 21. 21 DK points. We get 3x value for both those guys combined. So if you play both of them, I'm not going to say you're guaranteed one of the touchdowns, but you have a pretty good chance of getting at least one of the touchdowns. I would say. So I think Loveland makes for a good play as well. And he's also been on the come up the most recent weeks. Okay, so for the game stacks, I think obviously the most popular one will be Cincinnati Buffalo. I've already said my piece about that. Not the one I'm going to be targeting. That's one I'm going to be fading. Not going to stack that game. I think the second most popular will be the Rams and the Cardinals. And I'm just getting this feeling that the Cardinals are not going to do as well as people think they will do. They've been able to move the ball and score well. Rams are coming off a pretty nasty loss. Still have a really decent defense. So I'm expecting a bounce back from the Rams here. I like the Rams side of it. I don't like the Cardinals side as much. So that's not a game I want to stack either necessarily. I do like this Pittsburgh and Baltimore game. Very overlooked. Going to have a pretty low ownership across the board. But the reason I like this game is that it's very important for both these teams in their playoff hunt. If Baltimore wins, they have an 84% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, it's 38%. If the Steelers win this, it's 62% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, it's only 15% to make the playoffs. So there is a lot on the line in this Baltimore-Pittsburgh game. I would most likely stack the Baltimore side, which I don't think I even tried to do because there was some stuff I liked a little bit better. But I think I'm gonna, in my 3 entry lineup, or maybe even in the Millie, I might go ahead and enter a lineup that just has, this game stacked pretty hard. Like maybe we go with like a Bateman or something, and we can bring it back on Pittsburgh with Warren, something like that. Or we can bring it back with DK Metcalf. They just signed Adam Thielen, which is really interesting. He's only $3K, but they signed this guy, and they've been hurting for even a wide receiver 2 behind DK Metcalf. I'm a little bit worried about where Aaron Rodgers' hand is. Obviously injured his hand. Hasn't looked great since then. Only 117, 116 yards the last 2 weeks. Also not good for my best ball teams, but definitely still touchdowns on the table for Thielen. Maybe I'd bump Metcalf a little bit down because of the hand injury. But anyways, that is a game I would like to stack for sure. Chicago Green Bay, pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it's a big game for both these teams, as I said. The only issue I have is that they want me to stack Jordan Love, the Sims that I'm running, and they want me to stack them with, Watson or whatever. And this Bears secondary is not as bad as it once was. So I'm hesitant to do that. I still think it's fine. This isn't one of the best secondaries in the league. You can stack Love with Watson, and maybe you also stack in like a Dontavian Wicks, who had a really big week last week. If Golden is ruled out, he's currently questionable. If Golden's ruled in, maybe you go Golden for the same price. And obviously you can bring it back with Luther Burden. You have a really cheap stack. You can bring it back with Loveland. Really cheap stack there. And then, gosh, you can afford basically anybody. Like this defense, you can go. I think I want to go Commanders defense against Minnesota because I just don't trust Minnesota's offense at all. And then we've got just so much salary to work with. I mean, I can still get Jonathan Taylor in. I can still play my guy Keyshawn Junkins. And I can get anybody. I can get Jackson Smith-Njigba. So I see the vision there. I do. You know me, though. I want to stack Caleb. I want to stack him with Luther Burden. Luther Burden and Colson Loveland. And then we can bring it back with Jacobs, right? I feel better about that. Bears' run defense is terrible. Still a pretty cheap stack. And, I'm not stacking the game too hard there. I can still get Judkins, obviously. Defense, I still want to get to the Commanders probably, or the Titans, one of those two. But since I'm playing Judkins, I don't want to do Titans. I get Michael Wilson in there. I still got quite a bit of salary here. If I want to play Jonathan Taylor, I can. I still have quite a bit of salary in there, $6,500. I can get a lot of it. Sure. Right? Nothing wrong with that. So I do like stacking this game. The Green Bay Packers in the Chicago game is an interesting one to stack for sure for me. But my favorite game to stack is probably going to be this Indianapolis-Jacksonville game. Again, I said already, important game for these guys. I want to get, Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be fantastic to play here. So I can do that. And I can play the Jacksonville side. Obviously for me, Jacoby Myers has emerged as the wide receiver one for this team. But you can play BTJ. BTJ also is obviously capable of a big game. You can play Brenton Strange in there. Also a relatively cheap stack. He's still, Jonathan Taylor is the one thing that's expensive. If you don't want to go Jonathan Taylor, you can go the other side of it as well. You can go with Daniel Jones, who is risky. No one's going to have him. Michael Pittman, TJ Warren. And then I would bring it back. I don't know if I'm going to bring him. I don't like ETN necessarily here. It's a pass funnel, obviously. So I like Jacoby Myers or BTJ as the bring back. Or I guess you could bring back with Brenton Strange if you want. So a bit more of an expensive build there, but still very viable. So that's my favorite game to stack. All right. Who are my top plays for the week, though? Let's get into it. First and foremost, my favorite running back, Keyshawn Junkins. I want to play. I don't think he's going to have as high of ownership as other guys in the slate. I want to play him in this game that's got some weather going on. And they're able to lean on the run a little bit more because it's the Titans. Luther Burden's going to be in all my lineups. I mean, 3,800. You're not going to find a cheaper wide receiver that you can feel very decently about his floor. I don't think Luther Burden scores anything less than like 60K points in this one. And he's gonna have the upside of like 15 at 3.8K. So I think that's a solid one there. Michael Wilson is the other one. I want Michael Wilson in my lineups against this Rams defense. He's going to get double-digit targets. Again, it's you can't beat the floor for the price tag. Wide receiver one, really no other options for him besides Trey McBride to throw to. They're going to have to throw it. They're going to be losing. And, of course, we know the Rams like to score on everybody and put up points like in bunches. So, possibility this turns into a little bit of a mini shootout. So, I like Michael Wilson. And then my tight end of flavor, my tight end of choice is Mr. Colston Loveland for the same reason. So I do have 2 bears on here. Again, I already told you, but 3xing that value doesn't seem out of the question at all to me. Doesn't seem difficult at all to me. I'm not guaranteeing myself a touchdown out of those 2 guys, but I think I'm giving myself a very good chance of getting a touchdown of one of those 2 guys. And if that is the case, I should be able to at least 3x my investment there. So, Judkins, Burden, Wilson, and Loveland are my guys this week, and I'm going to build around them. Let's do a quick build just as fast as we possibly can here. For the defense, let's go ahead and plug that in. Let's go ahead and do the Commanders against the Vikings. Running back, I'm going to go ahead and plug in, since I got 2 bears here, I'm going to go ahead and plug in a bring back in Jacobs. I'm not going to do my QB yet because I want to see my wide receiver. Let's go with, actually, you know what? Let's go with Terry McLaurin. And then we can go with Gene Daniels as our QB. That leaves us plenty of money for Jonathan Taylor. So we can come up at somebody, maybe Judkins we come off of and see, nope, we don't do that. Maybe we come up off of Wilson to a better, yeah, we can go to Olave, sure. Or we want to keep Wilson because he is one of my top plays here. And, this is how I do it, right? Even though they're top plays, they're not in all my lineups, right? We have to make the salary work. Come up to Zay Flowers. I don't like that too much. BTJ, though, is interesting. Jacoby Myers is interesting. So I just play around with this a little bit more. Not the best, obviously, core to build around. But there are options here. Plenty of options. I mean, we can go to HN here instead and then see, we can do a lot of different things here. So, but that's going to be it, guys. That's going to do it for us. That is my plays for week 14 and recap of week 13. Please do leave me a review. Follow me on the Twitter, which is right here at the bottom of the screen, at DataDrivenOMS, at DataDrivenOMS. Give me some love. Tell me you hate me. Do whatever. It doesn't matter. Just go out there and comment so you can get some eyes on this thing. And, yeah, until next time, guys, hey, go get that money.